first question. So, creativity has always been there. And, like the way I look at it, there was the pre-internet era and the post-internet era. So, let's start with your thoughts on, how do you see the shift in the way creators think, how they express their creative thoughts in any form, and what does creativity now sort of need or is influenced by, or how does that, how does that form, the world that we live in?
Let's switch this on first. Yeah, excellent. And maybe concentrate on one of the three aspects you mentioned, which is how technology has been shaping creativity. I think one of the most important things that technology enabled is democratizing creativity. I think technology made it available, or maybe it made us, reconnect to whatever expression forms our creativity can take. So one of the hello.
Hi, Mika.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, you're on time.
Thank
you. We all came early, I think one of the most important aspects of technology is, as I said, the democratizing of creativity. Because when you look into the internet platforms right now, the most popular tools with technology right now, what they make is they make the hurdle of entry really low, the barrier entry of really low for self-expression of the masses, which is, if you think about it, is a great thing, because now creativity is no longer a privilege that's available to only selected people who have a certain education background, etc., but who can just, distract the information that's necessary and find their way of expressing themselves and still connecting to their audiences. So there is a market for all of that.
Right, Edmund?
I think there are two sides to this. The fact that, yes, the arts and the liberal arts and all of that was the privilege for the educated and the upper class. People now, anybody can become a director, producer, a DOP, a music director on YouTube or any other social media platform. One doesn't need to go to film school, right? So there is the fact that, yes, it's the media has been sort of opened up, which also means that there's more crap online. Right? You have to sift through the crap to get to the jewels, to the gems. But that's, like in every platform and every movement, there are the pros and the cons. But it's a great thing that now everybody, like I'm a television producer. I produce a show called Savdhan India. I've created that. Now that's 7 years old. Now when I'm fighting for budgets with the channel, right, and I say I can't do the show in this much X amount, they say, listen, look at YouTube. Somebody has just ripped your show off at 1/3 the budget and there are 6 million views. I can't compete with that. So there's a complete shift now and it's opened up.
That's Edmund, for you as an actor, how has life changed?
Well, there are two. On the one hand, there's that pressure from the platforms opening up to people coming in and doing, and there was another fear, which I think is receding now, a few years ago, that new technology was about to replace us, that we were going to be, that CGI was getting more and more lifelike, and most of, certainly the big movies, people weren't going to be sure if it was an actor or a simulation on screen, and actually we were going to become redundant. And I'm feeling calmer and calmer about that, because, well, two things happened. One thing is that people, as they pushed that technology, they came up, there's this idea of the Uncanny Valley, which I'm sure is familiar to a lot of people, that if something is definitely a cartoon, then we can relate to it. If something's definitely human, then we can relate to it. But as you get too close to being human, but not quite, our feeling of comfort and how we relate to it really drops off. And something that is almost human, but we can just sniff out the simulation, actually makes us feel very, it's not just that we find it aesthetically unpleasant, it actually makes us feel quite weird. And think films like there was Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, or there was the Beowulf film, or Polar Express, where they were really, really trying to make something that looked real. But actually, it looks almost like a corpse speaking. Like there's just something very weird. And it made children, Polar Express famously made children cry, which isn't funny. But it was not what they were intending with the movie. And so they pushed up, and they sort of hit a wall with that technology. And also there was something about the animation that felt very light and didn't feel grounded. And what's happened is actors have, as we often do, because we are very hard to get rid of, like cockroaches or something, we've fought our way back into the creative process with things like all the stuff that Andy Serkis is very famous for, that kind of motion capture. And so he now says that it's the most exciting time to be a storyteller now, because that augmentation of an actor's performance is where we're at, but it still relies on something real and human and relatable at the center of it, as does all the other things we were talking about, the other platforms. I mean, the simulations get better and better, but also our perception of simulation gets sharper and sharper, and it keeps coming back to needing something human at the center of it, which I feel very reassured about, because I'm not very good at doing anything else. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. So Mika, you have done a lot of work in virtual reality, and digital technology is right at the heart of what you do. So what have been your sort of experiences in the last few years, and how integral do you think, so are you changing the way you're expressing yourself as an artist because of technology, or it's the same idea told differently? What's your view on that?
Yeah, it's not the same idea, and that's the hardest part to explain to people. And then you try to tell them what virtual reality is, and they're like, oh yeah, it's like those cell phones that you put in the Google cart. And like, no, that's 360 video. That's been around for a while. It's marketed as VR, but marketeers are very clever. True VR has room scale. It means you could walk around a room and you can interact. You have a body sometimes, or you're a ghost, but it's not linear. And so, for example, in 1895, you get cinema, but for the first 15, if not more, years after that, you essentially, it's just theater. If you see most of the films in the silent era, it's just theater. And then somebody's like, oh, maybe we could do a close-up, right? And then we could move the camera. So that's the problem, is people now who are trying to sell virtual reality, they just want to take the old rules, because these people are trying to make money, and they're like, let's use the rules in cinema, character introductions and obstacles and 3-act structures and climaxes, and just put that into virtual reality. And that, you don't need to do that at all. You could be a dolphin with a pod of dolphins, or you could be mycelium, and you could just travel underneath the soil and bring life to, or communication to, other trees. It's kind of a completely different storytelling tool, but since it's a new grammar, you can't use previously existing grammars to talk about it. So in my piece, you get to become a giant insect. So I was sitting there thinking, like, actually, I don't want to be a human at all. I much prefer being an insect. So you get 6 legs, mandibles, antenna, and you move around this room getting used to being an insect. And then you see yourself in a mirror, and you can dance or freak out or enjoy being an insect, but you definitely haven't done that before. And that's the hardest challenge, I think, is to explain it, but it does change your operating system, because it gives you the chance to tell new stories. Yeah.
So, because we've got now more freedom to express ourselves, has it also become more difficult for discovery of talent and creators and creative ideas, because now there's so much around us? Is that a challenge? And also, do you think that, so how does one deal with it? So as an artist, right, if you're doing something and you're telling something, you're expressing something, but you're not finding the right audience because it's also the world is sort of expanded. There's so much clutter. Is there a way that you personally have sort of using something to break through and break that clutter?
Well, having dealt with a lot of leaders in the recent years, asking similar questions, I think if you are really burning for something, be it you're an artist, be it you're a leader, a manager, musician, whatever you name it, I think once you really burn for it and you find the right language and you start communicating it, there is a tipping point where you can't get ignored. So people who are really innovative and they have a good story to tell are able to stimulate the imagination of the masses. And it all starts with a very small group. So I talk to you, you talk to me, and I'm like, wow, I get excited about your idea, and then I'll just go and tell it to someone. And then the ripple effect starts, and it's irreversible. And but it requires you, as an artist, being absolutely persistent about whatever it is that makes your heart sing, in words of Steve Jobs. And you have to be persistent. You don't give up, and then it works.
It's a slight, because of where I come in a project being made, I rarely get a decision about whether or not a project exists. But what I am sensing is the sort of work that's coming our way as actors. Because things now exist, rather than something either being on telly at a certain time being on TV a certain time in the week, and then you've either seen it or you've missed it, or being in the cinema for a certain amount of time, because things now sit on whatever platform they're on, they're there for as long as they can be, and people are discovering them. There's time for something to find its audience now. I mean, people feel calmer if something finds an enormous audience straight away, but there are now, if something is of high enough quality, as you were saying, and it's on enough of a platform that people will find it, then word of mouth will mean that, and that means that, I was talking to a writer called Ron Hutchinson, who's done loads of things, theatre and film and everything. He now only wants to write television for on demand, really, as much as anybody gets a choice, because he says once you've found your audience, that long form story, it's like you can put novel-like character developments into things now, because once it's there, if people meet it halfway through, they can go back to the beginning, they can watch it, they can take 2 days off work and watch the whole thing, or they can fit it into their lives. So there is, and that's taking some of the, it's still there, the idea that you have to have a blockbuster of certain kinds of, but the idea that something can be the shape it should be because of what the story and the characters require, and the right people will come and find it, can, in the right hands, be really liberating for the actors. We go to the audition and we get the job, or we don't, but the people actually making the things, it seems that they're finding opportunities to make some really interesting work and tell interesting stories because of it, because of the opportunities it's providing, seems like.
So I think importantly what has happened is the viewership has fragmented. Right? There was a time when there was one television per household, and we were only watching Doordarshan, which is the public broadcast system here. There was only one channel, then two, and that was it. So we would assemble at 9 o'clock every evening to watch the soap opera or whatever series that was being aired. I mean, of course, 90% of this crowd don't know what I'm talking about, but all of you remember Doordarshan? Who's watched Doordarshan? Oh, so sweet of you. Okay, I'm not that old. Okay. So then what happened was the private television channels came in. So creativity changed. We were no longer operating under the stringent SNP guidelines, which is your standards and practices, which the government had set. So the private channels set apart another set of guidelines, which was more liberal. And then we could show certain things on television. Now, with Netflix and Amazon and the digital platforms, it's a boon for both the creators as well as the audience, because now it's almost free for all. almost. The kind of content that's being produced. As a creator, I'm very happy. I don't need to censor my ideas. I do not need to curtail them to fit into a box. I can do what I want to do, almost. So that freedom of creation is there, and also for the viewer, the choice is there. I can watch the content when I want to, and that is for a television producer, that's scary as hell, right? Because that's putting me out of business, right? I am dependent on numbers, or what we know as TRPs, right? Television rating points, right? So every Thursday, my life gets decided when the numbers come in, and the channel will call me up and they'll say, "What numbers are these? Horrible, your show's not working. I'm going to throw you out, and I'm going to whatever." So every Thursday, I'm reborn. I'm like Lazarus, come back from the dead. So my numbers are dependent on that. But now, as an audience, they don't want to watch it at 9 p.m. They're going to watch it at 11 p.m. on YouTube or on Hotstar or on whatever OTT platform there are. So that's the other flip side to this freedom and the platforms that have sort of sprung up.
And share the advertisement revenue with all those
Absolutely. The
platforms.
advertisers have stopped advertising now, and which means that the channel have less budgets, which means I get pittance to produce the show. So I can't even put in quality, and when I can't put in quality, they'll say, "Oh, but it looks like shit, so we're going to take the show off here." So it's like a vicious, cycle.
Sure. Actually, I have no idea how to answer that. I mean, so mainly I work I have made films. I've made a lot of films, but mostly for not-for-profit. Because the films that I wanted to make, producers didn't want to make. But I still made them anyway. And I made them in inventive ways, and I kind of got away with it, including a series called The Americans, which are 15 short films that was funded, thankfully, in my home state, Ohio, by Oberlin College, where we just made local documentaries with people who got to tell their own stories. And we put it online, and they went viral. And then they went to China, and then they were on Youku, and then they went viral there. And this helped me get a job done in Europe. And in Europe, it's been much better for me than in America in terms of also getting not-for-profit funding. And it's also, but I would say right time, right place, because I have lots of ideas, but again, it's been more like people don't want to make those. But in the case of the Goethe Institute, which produced my project Verwandlung, the medium was new from a consumer point of view. So it was suddenly virtual reality is a novel thing. So because I proposed at that time a project in Prague, which was a book adapted by Franz Kafka, this made sense. So, and because there are 150 plus Goethe Institutes worldwide, we can tour with it. So it's kind of, and then this got the project out there and people experienced it and we got invited to festivals and it sort of grew a different way. But in terms of the other objective for-profit way to go, I actually don't know. I think everybody's saying here though, it's for sure personal passion. People feel, and you have to be obsessed because 99% of the time I think people will say no.
Actually,
especially if your idea is great. If it's formulaic, or you put, just drop names in that everybody knows, then they'll say that, but if it's a great idea, likely they'll say no, in my experience.
It's really interesting that you put this because there are two aspects in it. One of them is whenever there is a budget problem in the States, etc., especially in the countries where we live, in German-speaking lands, in Europe, whenever there is a shortage of money, they cut budget from arts to pump it into the other cycles, etc. And because I think I still count myself as an artistic person. I think because they see that we can survive on so little, so it's like let's try, even less. What will so the less we get, the creative we get. So which is actually not the way you want to work, right? You just want to be abundance, and that's one aspect. And the other thing you were referring to about what was it you said? Well, I just forgot. So let's stop there.
You're talking about like when you have limitations that an artist is forced to be creative. I mean, right now with OTT platforms and the freedom, there are so many things to see, but half of them are crap. Because you spend the first 16 minutes just flipping through and you don't know what to watch, right? But you look at Iranian cinema, who had this very strict censorship, and yet what movies they came out with and what scripts. Who would have thought to make a script about a shoe or the balloons? It's because of the pressure. I mean, then Makmal Baf and all of the Kiarostami, they had to adapt and innovate. But that's why I think they're feeding us bread now and not cake. They're saying budgets, cut the budgets. These guys can survive.
Right. So so also what's happening, I think the big problem that's bothering everybody is also engagement. Is it now more difficult to engage audiences that we want to reach out to? Like you said, not for profit. Is it difficult to find funders for that? But once you have found the money and then you want to take it to an audience, how difficult is it to engage the audience in today's distracted world? And are there any specific things that you keep in mind when you want to say something, and to sort of make sure that you're able to engage the people that you want to engage?
Well, I'm probably very lucky in that respect, because when you watch a film or you go to the theater or you watch the ballet, you can, look on your phone and you can Instagram, you can be on Facebook, but when you're in virtual reality, it's a complete reality. So if you go into my piece, I even take away the controllers and you have trackers on your hands and feet, so you're lost inside this world as a giant insect. So you don't have to worry about people not engaging. You have to worry about the opposite when they take the piece off. Which is why it's only 4 minutes. But as far as I'm also a filmmaker, I think it's very hard to get people to engage in a 2-hour film these days that has, let's say, artistic resonance, because people maybe they want series or they want stories or they want YouTube. In other words, we all know that, right? The attention or the awareness has changed. I mean, so that, yeah, but not for virtual reality, thankfully.
Yeah, but I have a question for you. So, is it then more difficult to engage people to sample a VR content? Is that a challenge? And is it because of the devices, or is it because you leave them in an environment where they have to navigate, but they are used to being navigated because of the traditional way of storytelling?
Yeah. I think it depends on the virtual reality piece. Most I have seen are not interesting because, as I was saying, it's just people dumping the old rules of cinema or gaming technology. So now you're in a 360 environment, but you get to shoot zombies. Before you could only shoot zombies in 2D. Now you can shoot them in 3D, right? But if you have an actual story in VR and you have an actual, like you're inspired and you've brought something new to that medium, people are engaged and people will line up. And so we put this piece on at the Goethe Institute in Prague, and it was a 2-month exhibition. We were filled for 2 months every day from the morning until night, and we had to turn people away. And I think that says something because it's a new medium. And then it's traveled now to 35 cities. And in each city, it's here in Pune at the Goethe Institute. And I think we're already full today. And that's nice. But as a filmmaker, I still find the same old challenges that all of us can relate to when it comes to distribution, how to keep people interested, especially if you have something that's not formulaic, that takes time. Iranian cinema, for example. You should be in a place to watch one of those films. You can't just be moving through your channels and multitasking. But unfortunately, that's what people have gotten used to doing. They've forgotten that there's something great that takes attention.
Yeah, our attention spans have sort of diminished because we are always distracted by something or the other. So for me as a creator and a producer, it's very difficult for me to engage with my audience. One, because they have so many options, right? Again, we used to direct the traffic towards 9 p.m., which was prime time. We knew 9 p.m. was a prime time, here's the number one show, watch it. People would watch it. Now they don't, because they can access it on the app whenever they want to. So for a creator and a producer, we have to keep trying to shout louder, better, higher, more uniquely to get the attention. So which is very, again, it's based on budgets and time and all of that. But the audience has fragmented and they are the kings right now. At one point of time, the creators used to be the king when it came to traditional media. Now, of course, the creators are kings on YouTube and social media where they can do what they want to do. But for us who are traditional television producers, it's very difficult for us to engage with the traditional television viewing audience now.
I think it's just exactly what speaks to what you're saying, is that what we seem to have lost or be in danger of losing is a sense of the communal event when we watch something. So it's not, if there's a series finale, it's not everybody rushing home to watch it on TV. People actually are going back to the theatre, in London at least, because maybe that is still something that's happening live in front of you. People are going to the cinema more actually in England, because that's still, but there is something that we're losing our grip on, which is that sharing a story just by being in a room with other people watching a story, which isn't right for every medium. I think that's probably not particularly relevant to what you're doing, but it's something.
Now they have multiplayer VR, so you could be in a stadium. We could all in the future be in one stadium in Rome in the 1st century. In that case, but it'll be communal but different, because we could all be avatars and have different bodies or genders.
But I wonder if that, in the same way, a bit like what I was saying earlier, that we discovered that we needed to put something human, but that in the charge for a new technology, we'd lost something that was important about a human relationship with the art. I wonder if that's something we have to find a way of putting back in, that it's, as well as everything being there at the touch of a button, we need to share the experience somehow. And that's a big challenge, because we're so used now to just doing that, and whatever we want to watch is in our pocket.
Yeah, and just to add to that, at the end of the day, it makes everything that's available to you at the tip of your finger, it makes everything of that kind of commodity. And the moment it becomes a commodity, sooner or later it's going to be cheap or at zero cost. So I think that's a very, very crucial aspect to keep in mind. So if we can produce in such a way all those stories, all those characters, and the ways of interaction, designing the ways of interaction in such a way that it actually takes up that aspect of becoming people, knowledge, information, and at the end of the day, creativity, to not being a commodity, then I think we will have a chance.
Sure. So in India, we also deal with a lot of censorship when it comes to expressing our creativity. The stories we tell, always this fear of the government, and there is censorship on some platforms. In your countries respectively, is that a hindrance, and does that bother you when you want to express and tell stories?
I think it's always a question of perspective, and it's always a question of what you want to achieve with whatever medium is at hand to you. I think we in Europe think that we're living a very liberated life, some sort of democracy, but I think this whole notion of self-censorship and political correctness is actually worse than we think it is. And this is one aspect. It's the aspect from the democratic perspective, from the governance perspective. But the other perspective is also, at the end of the day, technology, like money, these are just tools. They're not, they're not the end target. So you don't just use technology because you think it's the coolest and the newest. If you don't have a form or a story that is appealing, that's compelling, that kind of resonates with the human soul, then it's just using a fancy technology and saying nothing with it, which is an expensive way of spending money. So I think really we have to sit back and think about, it happens to me in the corporate setting very, very often, or also in all sorts of different organizations. They're like, we have all this cool technology, we have these workshops, we offer design thinking here and Scrum there, and but at the end of the day, and we tell everybody to think out of the box, but they can't. And you wonder, because the measurements, because the habits, because at the end of the day, what you actually expect of them is the same as you just, So you go to a design thinking workshop, you come out extremely inspired, and you're like, I want to put all of it, because we're not lacking ideas. We're lacking the possibility to put those into work. And the moment they're like, so in schools, for instance, what should we do in order to not to kill creativity? And I'm like, just don't do anything. Just let's let it happen. So the moment you just, because right now it's more, we spend more effort preventing it from happening to, it's unexplainable to me.
Right. Mika, for you, in the US, is censorship and curbing your imagination expression?
Well, I don't live in America, and I wouldn't want to at the moment. There isn't really censorship except for self-censorship, which is political correctness, it's kind of funny because it's so conservative, the way people think. They're afraid to say certain things or act out certain identities because there is a correct way now. So I agree. But just going back to what both of you just said, though, I think you don't need, in terms of the technologies, I know it's a bit different than the question, but I don't really think technology matters either. No matter what kind of virtual spaces or how many 2D screens we have, or how much access our phones give us. It's already the question of, and each of us would have a different answer here, but what is the last piece of music, or theater, or film, or TV show, or book, or poem that really affected you? And that's a really good question, because it might be that as choice multiplies and we're saturated by this stuff, we forget why we maybe do it and what it means to consume it. So I just appreciated what both of you said.
Self-censorship. So I was watching a movie on Netflix, right? So Netflix and Amazon, when they came into the country, we were so happy saying, okay, Game of Thrones will not be censored, right? And we can watch the full version of it without having to download it and all of that. So I was watching a movie on Netflix. It's an Indian film called Parinda. Have you seen Parinda? Anyone seen Parinda? Okay, if you haven't seen Parinda, go and see the movie. It's a genre-defining gangster film from the 90s, made by Vidhu Vinod Chopra, right? So in that film, when it came out, there was a love-making scene between Madhuri Dixit and Anil Kapoor, right? Which had never been seen on Indian screen before. It was sensuous, it was silhouette, and it was beautifully done. But it showed nothing, right? So what the director of photography, who's a senior from my school, Binod Pradhan, did was he just lit it interestingly. So he just lit the rim of the body with blue light. So it just played out, right? So there was nothing really obscene about it. And the movie got released with an adults only certificate. The censor board didn't have a problem with it when it came out. It became a super hit. So I was watching the same movie on Netflix last week, and Netflix has chopped off the entire lovemaking scene. And this is self-censorship, you know. And I was wondering why. Because this is absolutely, I mean, you have frontal nudity on The Naked Director, which is on Netflix, and other series. You've got complete frontal nudity, but you're going to censor an Indian content where it doesn't show anything except for the back. And then I realized that the concept of freedom in the arts or in media is actually dependent on the government of the country or the environment of the country. With the right wing coming back, I guess Netflix is scared. You know that, oh my God, we don't want to be shut down. We are a new business in India, and you know let's just keep these guys happy because someone will see it and complain, and there goes our business. So the environment of the country is moving towards a very right wing, and so therefore Netflix has censored that. It's so scary now that when I'm shooting in a village, I'm shooting my crime show in a village, I dare not show a cow in the background. Because I don't know which person is suddenly going to wake up and create a... It takes exactly 15 seconds to just file a suit and just, finish my life. Because I can't even have a cow in the background because the channel will say, oh my God, don't have the cow in the background because we might get shut down. And my team will say, hey, listen, we can't even show the audience is going to say we harm the cow. And it's just, I'm shooting in a real village with goats and chickens and cows and buffaloes all running in the background, but I have to change my camera angle. Because I know my life is going to be hell. Which person is going to wake up? And so that's censorship and freedom. Where is the freedom? The freedom is dependent on the environment of the country, and it's scary right now.
Well, I think, and there's another. I don't think we have that level of censorship in the UK, but what we have across the world is a sort of. It's related to self-censorship. It's between ourselves and our relationship with the algorithm. Actually, you can put anything out there, but it will only reach a certain group, and you will only find things that are within your echo chamber. And again, as creators, as artists, you make something, and especially if it's something you think is saying something worth saying, and the audience who find it and come to see it are the people that you don't need them to come and see it because they're the ones who already agree with you before the lights have even gone down. And reaching out, and particularly at the moment in the UK, is completely divided in a way that I think has surprised a lot of us. And there's a chasm that we just can't reach across and talk to each other, and it's a shame that we haven't got those communal stories. Even if the story itself wasn't particularly, richly political, just a shared story is a really useful way of starting talking to each other. And that now that we're saying these are my stories that I'll watch, and the algorithms are saying if you like these stories, then you'll also like these stories. We're sort of drifting apart from the people who started in a different place with a different story, and finding a way to, maybe we should go and start watching stuff that we hate but as a challenge to I'm figuring out why we hate it and what it challenges in us, and the other side can start doing that as well. But it's not going to happen with the help of the algorithm, with the YouTube playlist.
Right, yeah. Mika, you had a cow comment?
I did, actually, in relation to the cow. Yeah, I went to see a Bollywood film.
You better be careful of the words you choose.
Okay, I will be. I was in Kolkata.
That animal, I would suggest you mention that animal.
That animal.
Because the video goes out on YouTube.
I was in Kolkata, and I went to see a Bollywood film, and I found it very entertaining and kind of funny that each time somebody lit a cigarette or had a glass of alcohol, that this warning sign came on. And then, I'm American, 40,000 people a year get killed by using a gun. It didn't matter that in the film about 200 plus people got killed by guns because there were no warnings. It was just cigarettes and alcohol. And I thought, this is really hysterical. When do we get the warnings for actual lethal weapons that are semi-automatic or grenades or possible atomic weapons?
And creators are still so scared of the regressive audience. We had a film called Bahubali, which was released I think 2-3 years ago. Was this magnum opus epic period drama So there was a fight sequence between the hero and the bull, right? There's a massive bull, and there was a fight, and it was created out of CG, but the CG was really good. So then the producers had to super saying this was a CG bull, this is not real.
Never mind about the person, right?
Yeah. Almost like, please don't sue us. I swear to God, this is CG.
Yeah.
That's the kind of audience we're dealing with, because we don't know which idiot's going to just wake up and say, hey, that's a real bull, huh? I'm going to take you to court.
So I've got a final question for you guys. We are Indians and we love to get some value out of our time and people. So I'd like them to get something valuable out of you. So in the next 2 to 3 years, within the creative industries, are there any trends or opportunities that you can talk about or that you can see or spot which can be useful for us to pursue or look at within what you're doing? Any interesting trends, or you want to sort of talk about something?
If there's a trend, I probably failed to find it. So this project, Vera Van Loong and virtual reality, and now I have other virtual reality projects, has individually speaking, that's been amazing, but I think it's difficult still because of the technology and the costs of the technology and getting people to produce these projects, but also that it's just now that the hardware is getting affordable. It's like €400 for an Oculus Quest headset with full room scale. So I guess it will, in my medium, if I'm talking about virtual reality, it'll depend on as things get cheaper for the average consumer, what kind of stories will producers be willing to fund or promote? Because it's a new medium, though, I think it will have its own trend.
Do you think that's an opportunity to focus on content that's VR, and do you think in the next few years it will sort of become more commercial?
I think it will become more affordable. Yeah, I think it will. As
or an
more
Apple will have some
headsets-
device. You think when Apple will come with?
I think we're all waiting for the contact, right, that goes in the eye with just so we could be in the Matrix. But I can't say. I just don't. I wouldn't know what the trends are. I feel like, but it's more goes back to as long as people have inspiration.
Yeah.
I would just say try to check VR out as a medium, because it might be the medium you've been waiting for.
Right.
It's in the sense of, I've been waiting for something that's non-linear, that has a grammar of a dream, where there's no more distance between the spectator and the spectacle, so that I could tell that story. But so it'll just depend. Yeah,
absolutely.
In terms of virtual reality technology or all of those MAX types of technologies, thus far, to be honest, I have not seen anything that really got me, and I do watch these things really, really closely, and so I'm very, very much interested in this type of thing. So I think the absence of the frame puts a totally different challenge into the storytelling, where you finally really need to take the role of not only the observer, because right now what happens is even if you're in the 3D room, it's still 2D. So you actually move from one frame to the other, and you kind of turn around and you get in but not really engaged. So, but that's a different topic. What I think is going to be really revolutionary in the next couple of 5 years, watch out guys, is how we pay the artists. The people who create the content, they have to be treated fairly. And I think that is the most important thing. The industry is screwing over artists. The industry is making it all, they're breaking it. They're making artists to kind of survive on the littlest of the littlest of the littlest, not distributing the revenues. So I think blockchain is something to watch here. I'm seeing a lot of very interesting things happening, and we have to redistribute the revenue, and we have to promote those who really create the content and not screw over them. I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
I wonder if, in the same way that we realised we needed that an actor's performance being augmented by digital was actually what was the most satisfying way of using that technology. There's a group who may have come to India, but they're all over. They're in New York and London, called the Secret Cinema, and I think they might be onto something, because what they do is take a movie, like for example they did Back to the Future recently, and you bought your ticket and you actually often don't know what movie you're going to see, and around the screen that they showed the movie on, they rebuilt the entire square with the clock, with the DeLorean. It's full of actors. It's a whole event that takes up hours. It can take a whole day. So there's the recorded thing that exists, but there's also a communal event around it. And I think that we might see more and more of that, a kind of a return to the happening, the something shared happening, which involves live actors, which involves a recorded element, which involves all of those things, but happens at a certain time and place. I hope, because it can be a job. We're all here.
I think one of the biggest challenges in the next 5-7 years is going to be how the medium of television handles itself in the traditional media. Because we are losing out right now. In our greed to get viewership, I'm putting X content on television as well as on my app. We have to segregate them. I have to make each platform exclusive. So if I want to watch X, I go to television only. That's the only way television will be able to survive. Otherwise, it's a downhill from here. And what she was saying about artist payment is the record industry, the music industry was killed off because how artists were treated. The music labels and the music producers never paid the artist. There was a documentary on Netflix about, I think, was it NSYNC? Where they go to this and they talk about, you've heard of NSYNC? They are like our generation's, what Korean band is that these days? Yeah, so the BTS, yeah, so they are our generation's BTS. So they were a sellout band. They were like hugely popular. So they talk about how they did this entire 10-city tour across Tokyo and Amsterdam, blah, blah, blah. They get back and then they say the manager gives them money, it's just $10,000. So we have to respect artists and pay them their due, or else it's going to be downhill.
Just continue on both. And actually what Edmund said, I think this is a beautiful vision that can combine everything. Like you're talking about multimedia performance, which it brings together a lot of things that have been said. We get to go to a space where it doesn't matter if it's live performances of music or theater or VR or 2D screens. I think we still want more. And so these multimedia, I do think that will be a trend, because it's about the human contact and experience. And a lot of, for example, even VR pieces, they're more built like rituals, where you have a beginning before you go on the headset, then you have the headset experience, and then afterwards you have a space for impressions and people to talk about, like a lounge, what they experienced. And people sometimes find that that's more enjoyable than what they experienced in any headset. It's meeting the people there and talking about the experience, and sort of like, that's kind of I guess, co-authorship. It's really like the co-authorship of the audience who gets to put all these pieces together and share. Yeah.
Just one thing to be a little bit also provocative, Anirban. At the end of the day, if television is over, let it be over. Let's look, into the future. So we don't have to kind of stick with these formats or with the instruments just because we've been doing that for the last 20 years. There is this term called the creative destruction. Things come and go, and they give way to things that are more interesting, more appealing. And at the end of the day, I think this, you and me being here, looking into each other's eyes, talking, and later, drinking a coffee, whatever, that is irreplaceable. That is not, you can't recreate that.
Absolutely, but you're forgetting the fact that Anirban owns a TV production company.
I know, so I'm kind of,
So video killed the radio star.
Absolutely.
Netflix killed the television star.
It's a
But wait a
cycle.
second, I'm still into painting. Painting goes back to caves. I think it's 30,000 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I just got my first painting, commissioned. I mean, it was by an artist. So I mean, radio's having a huge comeback in the States. We have podcasts, right? TV didn't kill radio. I mean, there's still, as far as I know, the opera, ballet, photography, right? Now these mediums are dead. It's just maybe they're combining in creative ways and finding new audiences, but like multiplying in terms of the storytelling capability. So I think TV will continue in different formats alongside all of the other mediums we're talking about, you know.
So probably one trend that is going to last is the retro.
The retro.
You know, the vinyl and the television and the radio
So true.
and the analog.
Yeah, I just bought 14 records actually
See,
in
there you go.
classical music. Yeah.
Oh, there's good.
Okay, there's one question. Do you have time for a question? One question.
My question is, it's true that in the digital age, more people can become creative. But then I was reading an article about what some researchers did using artificial intelligence. They scanned all the artwork that was available in the world, all the paintings in the world. And then AI started producing better paintings than humans could ever did. So in a way, in the future, while digital tools can help more people be creative and be creative in different ways, it can also kill creativity because artificial intelligence can produce better artwork. Maybe you don't need a Beethoven or any music composer anyway. I mean, if you feed it all the music in the world, it may artificial intelligence can potentially come up with better music.
What's better?
Oh, sorry.
Can you say what is better? I don't understand the word.
That the AI might create better works.
But
in
who
terms of-
decides what's better?
Yeah, well, let's not go in there. I don't think that it's a fruitful type of discussion when you start discussing whether machine creativity can be considered true creativity or not. I think that's more like a philosophical discussion, which doesn't really help progress
very
the subject
subjective,
matter.
right?
Yeah.
So who decides?
Well, I'm not interested in that. Who decides whatever works are really good or not good, or because it's a market, it's a curation thing. But the more important thing is the possibility that are being opened up using this kind of technology. So AI, especially in the creative realm, I work with one of those artists actually you were referring to, computer scientists actually. His name is Ahmed Al-Gamal, and the project he was referring to was that they scanned over 500 works, the master works of the last 1,000 years, and then made the computer come up with different combinations that have a certain originality. And then they put these works in an art fair, the Basel show, and asked random people about what they thought. And so they started a Turing test, which is whether you're able to tell if a work is done by an artist or non-artist. 85% could not say, which work was done by whom, which didn't matter. On the other hand, they also used attributes such as, this is very inspiring, emotional. So at the end of the day, it's the people who decide if an artwork is relevant or not. Let's not go there. But the possibility of you, let's say, as an art student, imagine your capabilities if you had the possibility to study instead of only 500 books, you were able to study 500,000 books. The augmented creativity you can reach, which we have to redefine what creativity is. That's for sure. We have to redefine it because creativity as we know it is under attack. If a machine is creative, then we have to sit there and say, ooh, what does that tell about me as a person, as a human? And how do I kind of improve? And I was just saying in the other panel, it's the creative machine that pushes us to rethink about our humanity, which is a good thing. I think we can be much faster in reaching the dreams with that kind of augmented creativity.
Thank you. I think we'll have to end now.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.